Commander Alexander Harris sneered as the pathetic alien council gasped at humanity's ancient warship, a terrifying monstrosity that completely outmatched every ship the council thought they controlled. Nervous chatter bounced across the gleaming, crystalline walls of the Krasnoth council chamber, the alien representatives fidgeting nervously in their hover seats. Zephyr, the UNA's ambassador, slammed his webbed fist on the sleek conference table. "This is exactly why humanity must be quarantined. Look at their ships, built only for death. Imagine that thing firing on our homeworlds." "Shut the fuck up, split-chin," Alexander's gravelly voice boomed across the view screen. "Humanity isn't going to be quarantined by anybody. We're here for our seat on this little council of yours, and after your kind bombarded our Earth colony on Alveron 6, be glad we didn't just crack this station open like a clam." A feminine voice, soothing and melodic, spoke up. "Ambassador Zephyr, all member species have the right to a hearing before the Council, regardless of their technological advancements." Harris laughed. "See, that's the thing you purples don't get. We aren't even that advanced. Our Hellbringer-class dreadnought out there? That's a 700-year-old relic, the kind of thing we have in museums. The modern shit that just skull-fucked that Hakaran pirate fleet over in Yekan Sector. Well, that would pop your little jellyfish eyes out of their sockets. And, buddy, let me tell you, they get real mad when you glass nuke innocent colonists from orbit." Harris rested his hands on the conference table, the synthetic muscles under his uniform tensing. "So maybe think twice before getting on our bad side again, because our bad side has enough firepower pointed at this station right now to slag it to molten scrap. We clear?" His eyes bored into Zephyr, daring the scaly bastard to make a move. Humanity had lost too much to these alien pricks. Brothers and sisters slaughtered, families torn apart. Harris wouldn't back down now. Couldn't back down. He watched as the councillors squirmed in their seats. They had started this war, and one way or another humanity would damn well finish it, even if it meant burning the galaxy down around them. The alien council immediately erupted into a chorus of shouts and demands, pounding their desks and waving their tentacles in the air. Zephyr stood up and pointed a talon at Harris's face on the view screen. "You will tell us the secrets of this ship, human. Where does it come from? What other weapons do you possess?" Harris smirked and shook his head. "The ISS Retribution is just an old relic, split-chin. From a war so long ago, your ancestors were still swimming in the primordial ooze. But if you really want to know what she can do—" The human commander punched a code into the console. The view screen cut to an external camera, showing the massive form of the Retribution moving through space, her hull covered in scars and blast marks. Zephyr's eyes narrowed. "I propose a challenge, human, to test if your species is truly worthy of joining this council. The UNAs will choose a neutral planet. Your Retribution will face our mightiest warship in single combat. Then we shall see who is superior." Harris nodded, his eyes gleaming. "Name the time and place, Zephyr. We'll be there. And when we kick your scaly ass, you'll give humanity a seat at the big boy table. No more bullshit." The view screen went dark. Harris turned to his crew, a motley assortment of grizzled veterans and bright-eyed recruits. "You're right, people. We've got work to do. Break out the technical manuals for this old beast. I want every weapon and system unlocked and ready for battle. Recon, get me everything you can on UNA's ships. We're going to show these ET bastards what happens when you fuck with the human race." The bridge erupted into activity. Engineers pored over ancient schematics, arming weapons that hadn't been fired in centuries. In the UNA's fleet, a similar scene played out as Zephyr roared commands. "The primitives have insulted our honor for the last time. This human filth will be crushed beneath the might of the UNAs. For the glory of our species, we will destroy them." The challenge had been made, the battlefield set. Two old enemies, human and UNAs, would clash once more among the stars, and this time only one would emerge victorious. The ships rocketed through the starry void, engines screaming. Alexander's eyes narrowed as Nexus Prime loomed on the view screen, a grey husk of a world pockmarked by craters, the perfect graveyard for Zephyr's ambitions. "Steady as she goes, Hawkins. Let's not give the Void Serpent an easy target. The grizzled Marine nodded, hands dancing over the controls. Aye, sir, matching velocity now. Alexander smirked as he strode to the airlock, mag boots clanking on the deck. The Unas had no idea who they were fucking with. He'd show them what real warriors looked like. The ruins stretched out before them, jagged metal fingers grasping at the sky. Zephyr emerged from the shadows, his elite guard at his back. Alexander squared his shoulders, Hawkins at his side. I'm surprised you had the balls to show up, Zephyr. Thought you might turn tail and run. The Unas hissed, baring his fangs. Your arrogance will be your downfall, human. The Unas do not flee from battle. They circled each other, hands hovering over holstered pistols. Hawkins's grip tightened on his rifle, eyes darting between the Unas' guards. Zephyr's tongue flicked out, tasting the air. When your ship is a flaming wreck in orbit, I will mount your head in my trophy room, a reminder of humanity's foolishness. Alexander barked a laugh. Big talk for a lizard. Let's see if you can back it up. The earth shook. Metal screamed. A massive form burst from the ground, showering them with dirt and debris. A mech, ancient and terrible, loomed over them like a vengeful god. Threat detected, engaging hostiles. Missiles shrieked from its shoulder-mounted launchers. Laser beams seared the air. Alexander dove behind a crumbling wall, dragging Hawkins with him. Zephyr scrambled for cover, his guards scattering like leaves. Fuck, what the hell is that thing? Hawkins popped up, spraying the mech with gunfire. Sparks flew as the rounds pinged off its armored hide. Some kind of AI war machine. Weapons ain't doing shit. Alexander cursed, mind racing. The mech advanced, its footfalls shaking the earth. They were sitting ducks out here, trapped between two enemies with no way out. His eyes met Zephyr's across the battlefield. A moment of understanding passed between them. They had a common foe now, one that threatened them both. Alexander keyed his comm, shouting to be heard over the chaos. Zephyr, we need to fall back, regroup and coordinate an attack. The Unas snarled but nodded. Agreed, but this changes nothing between us, human. Wouldn't have it any other way, Split Chin. Now move your ass before we're both scrap metal. They ran, darting from cover to cover as the mech rained destruction around them. Hawkins laid down covering fire, buying them precious seconds. As they retreated deeper into the ruins, Alexander's mind whirled with plans and tactics. They'd need every scrap of ingenuity and grit to take down this metal monstrosity. But he'd be damned if he let some rust-bucket AI rob him of his chance to put Zephyr in his place. This fight was far from over. Laser fire seared past Alexander's head as he ducked behind a crumbling wall. The rogue mech advanced, its metal feet crushing ancient bones to powder. Alexander searched frantically for Hawkins or any of his crew, but only the lizard-faced Zephyr crouched nearby, hissing curses. The mech's arm cannon swiveled, locking on. They had seconds before it fired. Alexander grabbed Zephyr's scaly arm. Move your ass, Split Chin, we gotta get clear. They sprinted through rubble as a plasma blast vaporized the wall. Zephyr bared his fangs. I need no aid from you, human. Alexander's mind raced. The mech was fast, heavily shielded. Brute force was suicide, but every system had exploits. Zephyr snarled but darted left, drawing the mech's fire. Alexander typed furiously, sweat beading his brow. Come on, you stubborn machine spirit. Let me in. There, a back door in the mech's friend or foe protocols. Alexander stabbed the command key. The mech froze, servos whining. Alexander smirked. Dumb hunk of junk that scrambled its targeting, but it won't last. Zephyr rolled his eyes. A temporary measure, we must find better cover. For once we agree, this way. They ran, navigating the ruined city. Zephyr leapt over obstacles with feline grace as Alexander struggled to keep up. Gradually, begrudging cooperation replaced hostility. Zephyr guided them through twisting alleys, his knowledge of the terrain proving invaluable. Alexander's technical skills countered the mech's relentless pursuit. As they took cover in a bombed-out temple, A reluctant respect started to form, soldier to soldier. Perhaps the Unas weren't so different after all. Alexander shrugged. "You're not so bad yourself, for a lizard." A metal hatch was set into the temple floor, nearly invisible under centuries of grime. Together they hauled it open, revealing a dark tunnel. "Holy shit," Alexander breathed. Weapon racks lined the walls, filled with guns he'd never imagined, but Zephyr stood transfixed by a glowing schematic, projected from a dusty console. "The Infinity Cascade," Zephyr whispered reverently, "an abomination that scours worlds clean of life. With this, the Unas could rule the galaxy." "Like hell," Alexander snarled. "No way I'm letting you warmongers get your claws on that. It belongs to the Alliance." "The Alliance? You mean humanity? You would use it to enslave us all?" They squared off, hands on weapons. The fragile trust shattered. Above, metal tore as the mech breached the tunnel. Alexander cursed. No time to fight. He shoved past Zephyr, running into the maze of corridors. Zephyr gave chase as the mech crashed down behind them. Laser blasts lit the darkness. Bullets sparked off metal. Alexander and Zephyr twisted through the labyrinth, instincts screaming to destroy the other and claim the prize. But as the mech's footsteps echoed closer, a darker reality set in. Trapped together, they had only two choices. Trust each other, or die as the last relics of Nexus Prime. Alexander and Zephyr burst into the central control room, their eyes widening at the alien holograms and dormant consoles. Shimmering diagrams of strange ships and weapons rotated in the air. Alexander rushed to the nearest interface, his fingers flying over the controls. "Cover me, Splitchin. I'm going to try to link this mainframe to the Retribution." Zephyr snarled but took up a defensive position by the door, his plasma rifle primed. Beyond the room, the heavy tread of the rogue mech grew louder, the floor trembling with each step. Data streamed across the screen as Alexander worked frantically to establish the uplink. Zephyr glanced over his shoulder, growling. "Almost got it," Alexander crowed as the progress bar flashed green. "Retribution, do you read? I'm transmitting." A bone-rattling boom shook the room. The mech had arrived, its massive frame filling the doorway. Its arm cannon swiveled, locking on. Zephyr shoved Alexander aside as a plasma bolt seared the console. Molten metal sprayed the air. The mech advanced, the room collapsing around it. Alexander and Zephyr sprinted for the far corridor. Debris rained down, the floor buckling. A chasm yawned open before them, the lower levels consumed in darkness. Zephyr leapt the gap with feline agility. Alexander jumped and fell short. Clawed hands snagged his wrist. Zephyr hauled him up, muscles straining. For an instant their eyes met, a flicker of camaraderie amid the chaos. The moment shattered as the ceiling caved in. They ran, dodging falling beams and showers of ancient masonry. Behind them the mech was buried in an avalanche of rubble. They stumbled out into the harsh light of Nexus Prime. The bunker collapsed in a plume of dust, swallowing the remnants of the long-dead civilization and the secrets of the Infinity Cascade. Alexander and Zephyr staggered to a halt, chests heaving. Their armor was scorched and dented, their faces streaked with grime. In the distance, two groups of figures approached, humans and Unas, weapons drawn, locked in a tense standoff. Hawkins' voice crackled over the comm, tight with worry and suspicion. Zephyr's elite guard encircled them, hissing accusations. "You led us into a trap. This was your plan all along, to lure our ambassador to his death. We don't have time for this shit. That mech was a threat to all of us. Zephyr and I had to work together to—" Plasma rifles hummed as the Unas aimed at Alexander. The humans responded in kind, muzzles trained on scaly hides. Fingers tightened on triggers. One wrong move, one stray shot, and it would be a bloodbath. Alexander and Zephyr exchanged glances, a wordless communication. If they didn't act fast, their mission would end here, in the blasted ruins of Nexus Prime. Alexander stepped forward, his voice steady. "Everyone stand down, that's an order." Hawkins opened his mouth to argue, but Alexander shot him a quelling look. Slowly, reluctantly, the humans lowered their weapons. Zephyr hissed a command in the sibilant Una's tongue. His guards followed suit, plasma rifles dropping to their sides. The two leaders faced each other, the weight of their next words heavy in the air. He turned to his crew, his voice harsh. "Hawkins, get the Retribution prepped for departure. We're heading back to Earth. The Alliance needs to know about this." To Zephyr, he said, "I assume you'll be reporting to your own superiors, but mark my words, Split Chin. This isn't over, not by a long shot." With that, he strode away, his boots crunching on the rubble. Zephyr watched him go, his expression unreadable. The battle was done, but the war was just beginning. The standoff between the human and Una's teams stretched on, rifles aimed and fingers twitching over triggers. Zephyr's elite guard hissed and snarled, scales bristling with aggression. Hawkins and the human soldiers glared back, jaws clenched and muscles coiled. Alexander stepped between them, hands raised. "Stand down, all of you. Lower your weapons." Zephyr moved to Alexander's side, his voice a guttural rasp. "Sheath your claws, my warriors. The human speaks truth." Slowly, reluctantly, the guns lowered. Narrowed eyes and bared teeth betrayed the simmering animosity between the two factions. "You would have us trust these primitives?" One of Zephyr's guards spat, tongue flicking. "After all they have done?" "We just saved your scaly hide down there," Hawkins growled. "A little gratitude would be nice." Alexander silenced him with a look, before turning to address both groups. "Listen up. What we found in that bunker changes everything. Technology beyond anything we've seen, and data that could shake the foundations of the galaxy." Zephyr nodded, folding his arms. "The human and I have seen things you cannot imagine, horrors that threaten us all. In the face of such danger, we cannot afford to fight amongst ourselves." Mutters of discontent rippled through the assembled soldiers, but none dared voice further protest. The shared ordeal of their leaders commanded a grudging respect. "This isn't over," Alexander said, meeting Zephyr's gaze. "But for now we have bigger problems. Agreed?" "Agreed," Zephyr replied, scales glinting in the harsh sunlight. "But do not think this makes us friends, human." Alexander allowed himself a tight smile. "Wouldn't dream of it, Split Chin." With an uneasy truce established, the humans and Unas parted ways, returning to their respective ships. The ISS Retribution thrummed with tension as Alexander strode onto the bridge, the crew snapping to attention. "Data transfer from the bunker complete," a young ensign reported, her fingers flying over the controls. "Decryption in progress." Alexander nodded, turning to face the viewport. Nexus Prime hung below them, a scarred and barren testament to the destructive power of ancient weapons. What other secrets did it hold? "Sir, I think you need to see this." The ensign's voice quavered slightly as she brought up a holographic display. "The data, it's not just schematics and technology. It's a history of the civilization that built this ship." Images flickered to life, depicting towering cities and sleek spacecraft. But as Alexander watched, the scenes turned darker. War machines marched across alien landscapes, leaving devastation in their wake. "They called themselves the Progenitors," the ensign continued, awe and fear mingling in her tone. "An ancient race, far older and more advanced than any we've encountered. But they didn't disappear. They were wiped out." Alexander leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "By who? What could possibly destroy a civilization capable of building ships like the Retribution?" The answer came in a chilling montage of carnage and destruction. A monstrous fleet, dwarfing even the Progenitors' mightiest warships, descending upon world after world. "Some kind of invasion force," the ensign whispered. "Ruthless, relentless. The Progenitors threw everything they had at them, but it wasn't enough. In the end, they vanished, and the invaders moved on." Silence fell over the bridge as the weight of this revelation sank in. The Progenitors, with all their technological might, had fallen before an enemy that now threatened the galaxy once more. Alexander's mind raced, pieces falling into place. The derelict ship, the rogue mech, mere echoes of a long-forgotten war. And now, they faced the same threat that had extinguished an empire. A proximity alarm shattered his thoughts, red light bathing the bridge. "Unidentified contact," the sensor officer shouted, his face pale. "Massive signature dropping out of hyperspace." The view screen flared to life, and Alexander felt his blood run cold. A colossal vessel, easily 10 times the size of the Retribution, loomed before them. Its hull was a nightmare of jagged edges and pulsing lights, an alien design that defied comprehension. Before Alexander could respond, the unknown ship hailed them, its transmission overriding their systems. A voice, cold and imperious, echoed through the bridge. "Attention, primitive vessels. This is the harbinger of the Void Collective. Your species have been deemed unworthy of existence. Surrender now, and your deaths will be swift. Resist, and suffer the consequences." Alexander's fingers dug into the console, knuckles white. The choice lay before him, stark and unyielding. Surrender, and consign humanity to oblivion. Fight and risk annihilation at the hands of an unstoppable foe. He looked to Zephyr's image on the comm screen, saw the same grim realization in the Una's eyes. In that moment, the lines between human and alien blurred. They were all children of the stars, facing an enemy that cared nothing for their petty rivalries. He met Zephyr's gaze, a hint of a smile tugging at his lips. "Humanity, Unas, it doesn't matter now. We stand together or we fall alone, and I don't know about you, Split-Chin, but I'm not going down without a fight." Zephyr grinned, all teeth and predatory hunger. "For once, human, we are in agreement. Let us teach this Void Collective the folly of underestimating our kind." The bridge erupted into a chorus of cheers and roars, human voices mingling with Una's battle cries. In the face of annihilation, 2 races prepared to stand as one and fight for the survival of all they held dear. The battle for the galaxy had begun. The bridge of the ISS Retribution shuddered as another plasma bolt slammed into the shields. Sparks erupted from overloaded consoles, the acrid stench of burnt circuitry filling the air. Alexander gripped the command chair, his knuckles white. On the view screen, the Void Serpent wove through a web of enemy fire, its hull scorched and battered. Zephyr's face appeared on the comm, his scales glistening with sweat. "Our defenses are failing, human. Whatever you're planning, do it now." Alexander's eyes darted over the tactical display, the progenitor data streaming across the screen. There, a chink in the alien ship's armor, a weakness in its shield harmonics. He opened a channel to the Void Serpent. "Zephyr, I need you to draw their fire, drive straight at them, give them a target they can't ignore." Theonas hissed, his claws flexing. "You ask much, Alexander. My crew will be slaughtered." "Trust me, when I give the signal, break hard to starboard, we'll hit them where they least expect it." Zephyr's eyes narrowed, a heartbeat of hesitation. Then a fierce grin split his face. "Glory to the Unas, we will clear your path." The Void Serpent surged forward, plasma cannons blazing. The alien ship turned its attention to the Una's vessel, energy beams lancing through the void. Alexander leaned forward, his voice calm and steady. "Helm, bring us about, flank speed. Weapons, stand by quantum torpedoes." The ISS Retribution peeled away, engines flaring as it raced along the alien ship's flank. The enemy's shields shimmered, weakened by the Void Serpent's onslaught. "Torpedoes locked," the weapons officer reported, her face bathed in targeting displays. Alexander's finger hovered over the firing control. "Steady, steady!" The alien ship loomed in the view screen, its hull a nightmare of jagged angles and pulsing lights. "Now," Alexander roared, "Zephyr, break off!" The Void Serpent wrenched hard to starboard, exposing the alien ship's flank. At the same instant, Alexander stabbed the firing control. 4 glowing projectiles leapt from the Retribution's launch tubes, quantum warheads screaming towards their target. They struck the alien shields, the weakened barrier shattering like glass. Secondary explosions blossomed across the enemy hull, atmosphere venting from gaping wounds. The alien ship listed, its engines flickering. Cheers erupted on the bridge, the crew's relief palpable. But Alexander held up a hand, his eyes locked on the view screen. It's not over yet, they're still fighting. As if in response, the alien ship's weapons flared to life once more, a defiant salvo of plasma bolts hurtling towards the Retribution and the Void Serpent. Target their engines, Alexander roared, his eyes locked on the tactical display. Don't give them a chance to recover. The alien ship shuddered under the onslaught, its shields flickering as explosions blossomed across its hull. But even as it reeled, a swarm of glittering shapes poured from its launch bays. Drones incoming, Hawkins shouted, his fingers flying over the weapons console. They're adapting to our targeting patterns. The bridge rocked as the first wave of drones slammed into the Retribution's shields, their lasers slicing through the defensive barrier. Alexander gritted his teeth, watching as the Void Serpent wove through the swarm, its guns blazing. We can't hold them off forever, Zephyr growled over the comm. That progenitor weapon is our only chance. Alexander nodded grimly. Agreed, but the integration process will take time. We'll be vulnerable until it's complete. Zephyr's eyes narrowed, a fierce determination etched in his reptilian features. The Void Serpent will shield you. Get that weapon online, Alexander. We'll buy you the time you need. Before the human commander could respond, Zephyr cut the link. The Una's ship surged forward, placing itself between the Retribution and the advancing drone swarm. You heard him, Alexander barked to his crew. Divert all power to the weapon systems. I want that progenitor tech up and running now. As the engineering team raced to integrate the ancient technology, the Void Serpent danced through the void, its hull battered by the relentless drone assault. Zephyr stood at the helm, his claws digging into the command console. Hold the line, he roared to his crew. We will not falter for the glory of the Unas. The Una's crew responded with a battle cry, their resolve strengthened by their leader's unwavering courage. Plasma bolts and laser beams crisscrossed the Void Serpent's shields straining under the onslaught. On the Retribution's bridge, Alexander watched the displays with bated breath, his heart pounding in his chest. The weapon's progress bar inched forward, each second feeling like an eternity. Come on, he muttered, his eyes locked on the Void Serpent's fading shields. Just a little longer. The Una's ship shuddered, its armor buckling as the drones swarmed over its hull. Zephyr's voice crackled over the comm, strained but defiant. Alexander, we can't hold them much longer. Is the weapon ready? Then use it, Zephyr roared, his words nearly drowned out by the screech of rending metal. Unleash hell upon these abominations. Alexander's hand hovered over the firing control, a fierce grin spreading across his face. With pleasure. He slammed his palm down on the button, and the ISS Retribution shuddered as the progenitor weapon roared to life. A blinding lance of energy erupted from the ship's prow, slicing through the drone swarm like a hot knife through butter. The alien fighters disintegrated, their advanced AI powerless against the ancient technology. The beam tore into the alien mothership, bypassing its shields as if they were tissue paper. Explosions rippled across the massive vessel, its hull fracturing under the onslaught. In a final, desperate act, the ship tried to turn, bringing its remaining weapons to bear on the ISS Retribution. Then, with a soundless roar, it exploded, consumed by a blinding fireball that lit the void like a newborn star. Debris peppered the ISS Retribution's shields, the human crew cheering, as the alien threat vanished in a maelstrom of fire and shattered metal. On the viewscreen, the battered form of the Void Serpent drifted, its hull scorched and pitted by the drone assault. But it was still intact, a testament to the unyielding spirit of its Una's crew. Zephyr's face appeared on the comm, his scales blackened with soot and his eyes gleaming with a fierce pride. Well fought, Alexander. It seems your progenitor weapon was worth the risk after all. The human commander nodded, a newfound respect for his former adversary evident in his gaze. We couldn't have done it without you, Zephyr. The Void Serpent's sacrifice will not be forgotten. The Una's leader grunted, a hint of a smile tugging at his lipless mouth. "Perhaps there is hope for our kinds to coexist after all, but do not think this makes us friends, human. We still have much to discuss." Alexander chuckled, the sound echoing through the bridge. "I wouldn't have it any other way, Split-Chin, but for now let's savor this victory. We've earned it." As the ISS Retribution and the Void Serpent drifted side by side, the wreckage of the alien ship twisting in the starlit void, a new chapter in the history of two races had begun. The battle was won, but the war for the galaxy's future had only just begun. On the bridge of the ISS Retribution, Alexander slammed his fist on the console as the progenitor weapon failed to fire. The ship rocked as enemy plasma blasts pounded the shields. "God damn it, what the hell is wrong with this thing?" Alexander shouted. Alexander's mind raced. They were out of time. The Void Serpent couldn't hold out much longer. Then it hit him, the power source they'd seen in the ancient bunker on Nexus Prime. It was their only chance. He punched the comm. "Hawkins, grab your team and get your ass to the hangar bay. I need you planetside now." In the armory, Sergeant Hawkins raised an eyebrow at the urgency in Alexander's voice. "What's the mission, sir?" "That bunker we found. There's a power source inside, some kind of ultra-condensed fusion cell. We need it to fire the progenitor weapon. Without it, we're dead in the water." Hawkins nodded grimly, already assembling his gear. "Understood, sir. We'll find it." As the Marine squad double-timed it to the hangar, a familiar figure intercepted them. Zephyr, his scales still smeared with soot from the earlier battle. "I'm coming with you," the Unas growled. "I know that ruin better than anyone." Hawkins bristled at the alien's presence, but a sharp look from Alexander over the comms silenced his protest. They needed all the help they could get. The hangar doors slid open, revealing a small, heavily armed shuttle. Hawkins and his team piled in, Zephyr taking the co-pilot's seat. With a roar of engines, the craft blasted out of the Retribution's bay, angling down towards the war-torn surface of Nexus Prime. In the ruined city, the twisted remains of the rogue mech lay scattered among the debris. Hawkins and Zephyr led the way, picking a path through the jagged metal and crumbled masonry. Scanners swept back and forth, searching for any sign of the buried bunker entrance. Suddenly, a blip on the scanner. Hawkins held up a fist, halting the squad. "I've got something 20 meters ahead under that collapsed tower." Zephyr flicked his tongue, tasting the air. "I'd remember this place. The entrance is close." They moved forward cautiously, weapons at the ready. But as they approached the tower, a deep mechanical growl echoed from the ruins. Glowing red eyes flared to life in the shadows. Hawkins cursed, bringing his rifle to bear. "Shit! Looks like our mech friend had a little brother." A hulking metal form burst from the rubble, its clawed hands crackling with energy. The squad scattered, seeking cover as the new mech opened fire, plasma blasts searing the air. Zephyr dove behind a shattered wall, his own plasma rifle humming to life. "We don't have time for this. We must reach the power source." Hawkins popped up from cover, raking the mech with armor-piercing rounds. Sparks flew as the bullets pinged off its thick hide. "Easier said than done, Split-Chin. This bastard isn't going down easy." On the Retribution, Alexander watched the firefight unfolding on the view screen. The Void Serpent shuddered under another barrage, its shields flickering dangerously low. "Come on, Hawkins," Alexander muttered. "Find that power cell. We're counting on you." The ship rolled and juked, narrowly evading a salvo of plasma torpedoes. The bridge crew clung to their stations, fighting with every ounce of skill and tenacity they possessed. They were all that stood between the enemy and annihilation. On Nexus Prime, Hawkins and Zephyr battled through the ruins, the rogue mech hot on their heels. Plasma blasts and ricocheting bullets filled the air, the two warriors dancing a lethal duet as they pushed ever closer to their goal. They had to reach the power source. The fate of both their species hung in the balance. Failure was not an option. Sergeant Hawkins leapt over a twisted beam, his boots crunching on shattered stone. Zephyr bounded ahead, his claws finding purchase in the rubble. Behind them, the rest of the team panted and scrambled, sweat-soaked and exhausted. Zephyr flicked his tongue, tasting the air. Close, the energy signature is getting stronger. A plasma bolt sizzled past Hawkins's ear, scorching the wall behind him. The rogue mech, its metal hide dented and sparking, lumbered into view, its cannon arm glowing with deadly light. Zephyr snarled, his rifle snapping up. Plasma fire stitched across the mech's torso, leaving glowing scars in its armored plating. The machine staggered, then righted itself, its glowing eyes fixing on the Unas warrior. "I'll hold it off," Zephyr roared, his fangs bared. "Get the power source." Zephyr's laughter echoed through the ruins as Hawkins and the team sprinted onwards, the sounds of battle fading behind them. The chamber was vast, its walls lined with pulsing conduits and glowing panels. In the center, suspended in a crackling field of energy, hung a small, innocuous-looking cylinder. He stepped forward, reaching out with a trembling hand. His fingers closed around the cylinder, and the energy field dissipated with a hiss. The chamber plunged into darkness, the only light coming from the softly glowing object in Hawkins' grip. "We've got it, let's move." They ran, retracing their steps through the crumbling labyrinth. Hawkins' heart pounded in his ears, his breath coming in ragged gasps. They had to make it back to the Retribution. Everything depended on it. A figure emerged from the shadows ahead, and Hawkins skidded to a halt, his rifle snapping up. But it was Zephyr, his armor scorched and his scales slick with blood. Zephyr grinned, his teeth gleaming in the dim light. "Scrap metal. Now let's get off this rock." The hangar was a scene of chaos, the deck shuddering underfoot as the Retribution's guns thundered overhead. Alexander snatched the power source from Hawkins's grasp, his face grim. "Good work, Sergeant. Now let's hope this thing does what it's supposed to." He sprinted to the weapon bay, Hawkins and Zephyr hot on his heels. The progenitor cannon loomed before them, a behemoth of ancient metal and pulsing energy. Alexander slammed the power source into its receptacle, his fingers flying over the controls. "Weapon system online," he shouted over the din of battle. "Targeting the enemy ship now." On the view screen, the alien vessel filled the frame, its hull bristling with drones and glowing with malevolent energy. Alexander's jaw clenched, his finger hovering over the firing control. The cannon roared to life, a blinding lance of pure destructive force erupting from its muzzle. It struck the enemy ship dead center, piercing its shields as if they were tissue paper. For a moment, the alien vessel seemed to hang suspended in space, transfixed by the beam of searing light. Then it exploded, its hull shattering into a million glittering fragments. The drone swarm winked out of existence, consumed by the firestorm of the ship's destruction. Cheers erupted on the bridge of the Retribution, the crew embracing each other in relief and triumph. But the celebration was short-lived. A proximity alert blared, red lights flashing on the tactical display. Alexander's eyes widened, his blood running cold. "Incoming missile, brace for impact." The fusion bomb streaked towards them, a glittering dart of destruction homing in on the Retribution's heart. There was no time to evade, no way to stop it. Zephyr's voice crackled over the comm, hard and determined. "Retribution, this is the Void Serpent. We'll intercept the missile. It's been an honor, Alexander." Zephyr, no, there has to be another way. But the Unas warrior's mind was made up. The Void Serpent surged forward, placing itself between the Retribution and the oncoming bomb. "You fought well, human. Don't let our sacrifice be in vain. Find the truth behind all this. Make it mean something." Alexander clung to the command chair, his knuckles white as the ship shuddered and groaned around him. Alarms shrieked, consoles exploded in showers of sparks. And then silence. The Retribution drifted, broken and battered, amid a field of debris and shattered metal. On the view screen, the wreckage of the Void Serpent tumbled slowly through the void, a shattered monument to the Una's sacrifice. Alexander slumped in his chair, his face a mask of grief and exhaustion. They had won, but at a terrible cost. Zephyr, his unlikely ally and friend, was gone. "Helm," he said, his voice hollow. "Set a course for the council chambers. We have a report to make." The council chamber was in an uproar, the assembled dignitaries shouting and gesticulating wildly. Alexander stood before them, his uniform still stained with soot and blood, his eyes haunted. "The threat has been eliminated," he said, his voice carrying over the din. "The enemy ship is destroyed and the drones have been neutralized. But the cost was high." He told them of Zephyr's sacrifice, of the Una's warriors' bravery in the face of certain death. A hush fell over the chamber, the weight of the revelation sinking in. "In light of these events," the council leader said, his voice grave, "we have reached a decision. Humanity has proven itself worthy of a seat on this council. Your bravery and sacrifice will not be forgotten." Alexander shook his head, a bitter smile on his lips. "No, I'm afraid I must decline." Shocked murmurs rippled through the chamber. The council leader leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "Commander Harris, I don't understand. This is what you fought for, what your people have strived for." "What I fought for," Alexander said, his voice low and intense, "was the truth behind the progenitors, behind the enemy that wiped them out. And I won't find that truth here, in this chamber." He turned to face the view screen, the stars glittering cold and distant. "I'll find it out there, among the ruins of dead civilizations and the echoes of forgotten wars. I'll find it for Zephyr, for the Unas who gave their lives so that we might live." The council leader sat back, his expression unreadable. "And what of your ship, Commander? The Retribution is badly damaged, in need of repairs." Alexander's smile was grim. "She'll fly, she'll carry us to the stars, to whatever fate awaits us." He turned to leave, his footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. At the door he paused, looking back over his shoulder. "When I find the truth, I'll return. Until then, consider this my resignation." The ISS Retribution limped away from the council chamber, its hull scarred and pitted, its crew battered but unbroken. On the bridge, Alexander stood before the viewport, his gaze fixed on the infinite expanse of space. Somewhere out there, amid the cosmic dust and the cold light of ancient stars, lay the answers he sought. The truth behind the progenitors, behind the enemy that had destroyed them. And he would find it, no matter the cost. For Zephyr, for the Unas, for all those who had given their lives in the name of a future they would never see. The Retribution leapt forward, its engines flaring to life, carrying its crew into the unknown, into a future forged in the crucible of war, tempered by the bonds of unlikely friendship. A future that, for better or worse, would be forever shaped by the choices they had made and the sacrifices they had endured. The stars beckoned, and the Retribution answered, a flaming arrow piercing the heart of the void, carrying with it the hopes and dreams of a galaxy on the brink of change. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.